I don't think I've ever really been too afraid of things. I've been in some spots where a lot of people would question. I refereed college football, and I was the umpire, so I was back with the linebackers where you could get hit and knocked over pretty fast, and trust me, that happened. I like carnival rides. I'm not afraid of any of that, but I'm not sure that I would ever want to go storm chasing. I'm not. My mom was one of those get in the basement kind of moms. She was always nervous, and she injected that into us about storms. Well, Ryan Mauk is a storm chaser. He's somebody that we use on radio, and he's somebody that I know you'll be able to get some information here from Beck News as well. Let's bring him in and get a chance to visit with him. Ryan, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why? Why do you do this?
Oh, that is such a proverbial question, really, the big why. I don't know. I wish I could pinpoint exactly when.
Well, was it there when you were young? I mean, was this always?
I've thought about this. I was the kid that, during, when we'd have tornado warnings at my daycare center or my latchkey programs, they'd be trying to huddle all the kids to come inside, and that'd be all, trying to like, I want to see. I'd be like, get in here. I'd be the kid they gotta like grab by the collar. But I don't know. I'd like to honestly pinpoint exactly when the spark clicked, but I've always been fascinated by it.
So I talked about my mom. Mm-hmm. I mean, my mom was a get in the basement mom.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
I
mean, one of those, huddle around. Don't be afraid. Yeah, okay, Mom.
Okay.
I'm afraid now. I mean, what were your parents like?
Well, about the same. I mean, you had a share of tornado warnings and stuff. I guess, my mother is from the generation that she lived in Fargo during the Fargo tornado, and those are some of her youngest memories as a child. So it spooks her.
What year was that? 57?
1957.
Yeah. That was a terrible.
It was bad. And Matt, a little known fact that Dr. Ted Fujita studied that tornado and the Dallas, Texas tornado, and between those two, that's where he concocted the F scale, which is what we know now as the EF scale. The EF5 obviously being the worst of the worst, and EF1 being nothing at all. That was an F5.
Okay, before I lose that, how does he determine that? I mean, is it width? Is it speed? Is it what?
Now it's basically done by surveyed damage on the ground.
Okay.
Engineers and meteorologists from the National Weather Service and National Weather Service, I think they sublet out to a couple contractors of actual structural engineers, and they all get together and they go out and say, okay. And they've been able to determine what wind speeds will do what kind of damage, with current standards of construction. So back then, he determined that by basically just getting a whole bunch of photos from a whole bunch of various angles, putting them all together, and then just basically just being able to figure it out. There's a really good documentary about that on YouTube that I forget the name of it, but it's super informative. But he just basically pieced it together. And he was able to figure out that, when these photos were taken, this tornado was here. And it did this damage, so like they could really kind of piece it together and figure that out. But yeah, that scale was, or that tornado back then was an F5. It was at the top of the scale.
So when you're my age, you've seen storms by now. I mean, I'm 60 years old, so there's been storms that I remember. 2008. When I went up to Northwood, and I wasn't there for the storm, obviously.
Yeah, that one.
But when it wiped out a whole bunch of Northwood, caused a death. Someone died in that tornado. When I pulled into town, I don't know if it was a car or pickup. All I know was there was a chunk of iron in the shape of a ball.
Yeah.
And it was about a mile east of Northwood. I mean, it was that severe, that strong.
It was EF4.
It was EF4. Yeah. Okay, well, I was hoping you would know the number.
I'm pretty sure.
But, the folks in Northwood are never going to forget that, ever.
Oh, no, how could you? It's something that's just so... I tell people this, it's kind of a paradox with me. I hope to see them in a rural area away from everybody and not hurting anything and just, but unfortunately that doesn't always pan out. Yeah, that's that Northwood storm was pretty, and I wasn't even really chasing to the level that I am now. At that point in my life, I was like, if something's in Western Cass County, we'll go take a look at it, kind of thing, you know. But I wasn't really deep into it like I am now. But
So when we say chasing, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, for me, I guess now I look at I'll look at the weather models a few days out, or sometimes even a week out, to see if there's patterns coming up, which maybe after Memorial Day, maybe somewhere between here and Nebraska, we'll
instead
have
of crossing our fingers, we're all going like this. We don't. Yeah.
We might get some stuff up here. Way too early to tell.
Okay.
But I'll look at it a few days out, and I'll kind of decide really like the day before, like where I'm going to be hanging out. I also look at the Storm Prediction Center's day one outlook for severe weather to kind of look at, you kind of correlate the two. And then I just go. I go to, like, I've gone as far as Kansas. I've ended up in Colorado. I've gone to Kansas and came back empty-handed. I've gone to Kansas and gotten very close to some things, you know.
I can't imagine that. Let me give you one more example for me, and then we'll get into all yours. I was golfing at Dakota Winds Golf Course in Hankinson, okay? And it was weird because it was sunny, nice, and about, God, I want to say not 10, 8 miles, 7 miles north of there is a little town called Tyler. I mean, little town called Tyler. And, there's a farm off in a distance, and I'm watching this tornado head to it. But it's all kind of clear around it. I mean, there's nothing that would indicate to you, holy cow, this is a bad storm that's coming. There's a lot of wind to it.
Yeah.
It was just a cloud or two. Yeah. But that tornado wiped out a guy's home.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, can it be that spotty?
It can, yeah. I mean, really, a tornado, by definition, it's a column of air from a parent thunderstorm connecting to the ground. That can be on a very small scale. I mean, all you really need is a small thunderstorm with a little bit of vorticity, the stretching and the spinning, and that's it. That's all it takes, I mean, and granted, I mean, some of the worst tornadoes are on a big supercell thunderstorm, whereas, I mean, I've even seen little land spouts, as they call them, which are small. I mean, technically it's a tornado. It's a funnel cloud and it touches the ground, but off a very small puny little thunderstorm out in last one I saw was out in Chaffee, North Dakota. Actually, it was just we weren't even expecting a severe weather risk that day. It was just there was just enough spin in the air to get it done, and so that's kind of the mystery that I think scientists are still trying to figure out. As far as like what makes Storm A throw down a tornado, and Storm B, it's the exact same storm, it doesn't.
Okay.
And that's what they're trying to really kind of hone in on. So that's kind of a part of that, like, it seems like you're saying, it seems seemingly not really a bad day, bad storm, but one cloud, if it has enough lift,
So you take that and you put that out there. Can you predict? I mean, you're storm chasing. So what I just heard you say is, you look at the weather patterns, you say, you know what, there could be trouble here. You go out in that rig of yours, which, by the way, way cool rig. You got a million ways to communicate in that rig.
Yep.
You go there and you sit around and you say, look, if it's coming around here, right? Okay.
Generally.
So how do you know which way it's coming? How do you know
which way it's going to go?
Even when it's on the ground. I mean, because it's my understanding that it could be heading west to east, and the next thing it does, it decides not to go east, and it's going north, and you might be sitting north. I mean, how do you protect yourself?
Generally the rule of thumb is if you stay south and west of it, for the most part, you're going to be okay. And like that way, if you're in a bad spot, you can just stop, and it will keep going. There's exceptions to that rule, obviously. There's one down in El Reno, Oklahoma. That was absolutely AF5. I mean, it probably was an AF5. If it would have went through Oklahoma City, it absolutely would have been an AF5. That's my opinion. Anyway.
Okay.
But that storm, it was an exception to the rule. It decided to go south all of a sudden, and then there were a whole bunch.
You could have been in the way of that.
I could have been in the way of that. A lot of storm chasers were in the way of that, and they had.
Well, we just heard about a storm chaser that. Was it one or two people that lost their lives doing this?
Yeah, it was a couple of people out in southern Minnesota. They, I guess they were in blinding conditions. They decided to stop because it wasn't safe to drive. Well, a semi behind them probably should have stopped too and didn't. And then, surprise, here's a car.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Well,
Bad deal.
Be careful.
Oh yeah, for
Don't
sure.
do this.
No, yeah, it's
So
very.
the adrenaline, though, the rush, that's got to be something.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's cool to see. I mean, I guess it's more than that, though. For me, it's more of a particular fascination with the weather and how things happen. I guess
The science of it.
The science of it, right? I mean, if it was purely adrenaline, I could find far more less dangerous things to do, to get my kicks or whatever. But yeah, it is an adrenaline rush seeing it.
What does your
happen.
family say about this?
Oh, they're.
Wait, that pause said it all.
Yeah. They're, it's a guarded encouragement. Like, yeah, just don't get yourself hurt. Kind of thing.
That's safe kind of thing, because they know they're not going to stop you anyway.
No. I have a secret. My secret goal is to get my mother out there. Well, that'll never happen. But
something inside of me, it makes me happy.
Yeah, it's probably. I don't think she handled it too well.
So you're using some of that data though, and you're putting it through media.
Yeah,
I know that because we do some of this on the radio side,
Right.
and I'm hoping we can do afterwards some reports on the TV side here too,
Sure.
to try to let people know what you saw and when you saw it. But
Right.
how exciting is it to be able to share that information?
Oh, that's huge. Yeah, I mean, I've always said that around here, if I can help my community be aware and stay safe, I would I love to do it, and that's rewarding. It's super rewarding, especially since I mean, like I said, for the most part, they're out in the middle of nowhere, and like probably, I don't know, 98% of tornadoes happen in a very rural, remote area, and all they really hurt is maybe a shelter belt full of trees or something, and that's it. But on occasion, they do wreck things. They do hurt people. So it's important to be able to relay that information in real time, to the media and the National Weather Service to confirm or deny and say where things are. That just helps keep.
Somebody told me once that the worst storms come from the southeast. Does it matter? Can they come from anywhere?
Not really. I mean, in a general sense, if you look at how we're orientated with most of these systems, you get a trough coming off the Rocky Mountains, and then it settles in the plains somewhere in here. And for the most part, they go west to east. Sometimes, I mean, there's been tornadoes there was a few years ago. There was a thunderstorm. Where was it? It was in Clay County, and it came back the other way. It was moving west against some shear, and actually that dynamic kind of there was a funnel cloud that touched down out by Sabin. And, so there's exceptions to the rule.
Yeah.
For the most part, they generally. I mean, if you're thinking in terms of those big bow echoes, those big, big rolling shelf clouds that we see so many pictures of, those usually go west to east. Yeah. Okay. And usually at a pretty good clip too. They're moving at about 50, 60 miles an hour. They hit town. People's trampolines are in someone else's yard. The garbage cans halfway down the street. Those kinds of things. Yeah.
Okay. Ryan, I could do this all day. I guess the way this should end is be safe.
Oh, yeah,
Just
absolutely.
Because we want to talk to you again about this.
Yeah, no, there's been a few situations where I've been out there and I back off because I'm just, if I'm not 100% sure I can be safe, I just stop.